If, like me, you are an avid journaler, then you no doubt know there are so many benefits to this practice. You get a huge amount of clarity on your psychological state and your mindset. You get to look back and see how far you have come over the course of your life. And you have concrete details that most people don't have about how your story has played out. Now, this last bit in particular can be a huge benefit when you sit down to write your memoir, but you've still got to have some structure, you've still got to have some know-how to figure out how to turn that journal into a memoir. And fortunately for you, that's what I'm going to talk about today. Stay tuned. Now, y'all know I don't normally offer discounts, but right now we are celebrating the 1-year anniversary of this YouTube channel, plus our full-time hire of our newest master book coach, Emily Thrash. So right now, when you sign up for a one-on-one coaching package, you are going to get a 50% off coupon for one of our a la carte publishing services. You can either watch to the end of this video to learn more about this offer, or head over to pageandpodium.com/Emily. I love working with clients who journal for a number of reasons. Not only do we have that clarity and we have the insight into what exactly we want our message to be, what we have learned through the process, but it's so great to be able to look back at that journal and get the details that most people can only try to fish out of their memory. We sometimes will quote things, at least I do, so we know even what was said in the moment. We know where we were, we know the timeline. We have so much information. And in fact, that can actually be one of the things that makes this process even harder. I know I journal so much that I often will end up with a new journal every 3 weeks or so you end up with a lot of material. So I want to talk today about how to take all of that and organize it into a memoir that people are actually going to want to read, which is our goal, right? But before I do that, I do want to give you a few caveats, because I do find that there are some things that you really need to keep in mind as you are moving forward with this process that are specific to people who are avid journalers. So the first thing that I want to point out here is that because people who journal have all of this material, it is really easy to talk yourself into the idea that you are like halfway there already. And I do want to say that that is sadly not the case. And in fact, it is great to have that journal to reference. But I will say, when I have worked with people that have journals, they struggle with the same things everybody else does. So I don't want you to think that because you've got this journal, it's just going to be a piece of cake. And the reason I don't want you to think that is because that kind of overconfidence can really derail you. So I want you to just sort of really try to be very clear with yourself and very realistic that this is still going to take a long time. Now, I just drop in here that we do have a free download that will help you figure out the timing that your memoir is going to take. You can grab that at pageandpodium.com/plan. But what we're talking about today is just making sure that you're being really realistic and thinking about how long this process is actually going to take you. Even though you have a journal, it's still probably going to take you at least 6 to 9 months, maybe a year. So just kind of be prepared for that as you're moving forward. The second caveat, the second kind of warning that I want to give you is that as you are going through that journal, I'm going to talk to you about how to do that in a second, but as you're doing that, just really go in with the knowledge that not every scene, not every kind of event that you wrote about in that journal is going to make it into your book. Now, depending on how much you journal, you may already know that. I would certainly know that because, as I said, I have hundreds of pages of journals. But even if you don't have all that much, just kind of be aware, because sometimes what's happening on that day, we want to journal about it, right? But then later, in kind of the scheme of our story, it doesn't really turn out that it matters that much. So just kind of go in knowing that there is going to be a lot of material on the cutting room floor, particularly when we're talking about events. Okay, the third thing is pretty similar, but I think it's worth distinguishing. And that is that when you are journaling a lot, or at least if you're like me, when you are journaling, you'll kind of come up with these kind of symbols or metaphors or sort of epiphanies, things that seem so brilliant to you in that moment. And they may be brilliant, actually. I'll look back sometimes and be like, oh my gosh, that was such a smart thing to say. One thing to keep in mind is that as you are turning that journal, which is all of these days of your life, into a memoir, which needs to be one cohesive story, there will be a lot of those lessons that are going to end up on the cutting room floor. So this advice we sometimes say, I think tongue-in-cheek, around the writing community as kill your darlings. And that is something you really need to be prepared for. You will come across in this journal things that you have written, phrasings or pieces of advice to yourself or kind of realizations that you really thought in that moment were just the core of everything that you've ever understood. And you do need to kind of be ready to keep that out of the book. Now, that does not mean that that is not a really valuable insight for you. And I'm speaking, by the way, from my own experience. I will write things in my journal, and I always, if I write something I think it's particularly smart, I'll highlight it for later. And a lot of that stuff, I do really love to look back at it. I'm really glad that I wrote it. But I also can see that if I put all those things into one book, it would be kind of all over the place. So be prepared that probably you are picking one, maybe two of those lessons that you wrote in your journal to be kind of an overall theme, or we call it a key message in the memoir method. So be ready to kill your darlings. Okay, and the last caveat I want to give you, number 4, keep in mind that even though you have all this material, you are still going to need to write. You will still need to sit at the laptop, create what you want to create, write out those scenes. So I say that because when we are journaling, we are usually doing a lot of telling, not showing. And if you've watched many writing videos or read much about writing, you know that this show don't tell thing is a pretty big thing in the writing community. All that means, by the way, is just simply that we're going to illustrate what the scene looked like. So we're going to basically bring a camera to the scene and use that, what that camera can catch, we're going to put that on the page. When we journal, what we're usually doing is kind of just giving broad strokes overviews, right? We may give some details, but we're probably not, putting dialogue in there. We're probably not, talking about kind of the sensory elements of what was around you, where were you, that kind of thing. So as you are moving from your journal into your memoir, you are going to still have to sit down and do a lot of that work. You are still going to have to make sure that you have the time allotted to write just like everybody else. It really is not going to save you that much time. You're getting a lot of extra insights, but it's not really a fast forward button to have that journal. Okay, so once we're through all that, I know probably some of that you already knew, but I wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Let's talk about this system that I use to take these kind of elements that we have from our journal, organize them, and get them into that cohesive book. Now, this process, I will tell you, this process is called the Memoir method. We have a program that's based off of this method that it goes into a much more depth with much more support. So you can read about that at pageandpodium/memoir-method. We also do offer, by the way, a memoir checklist. So you can sign up for that, pageandpodium.com/checklist. I'll make sure these are all in the show notes. But I want to just kind of give you a really high-level overview of how you're going to do this. And then if you decide you'd like to have more support, you can either reach out to work one-on-one, you can join the group program, the Memoir Method group program, whatever you need. Okay, so as you are getting started with this process, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take an inventory. So all this looks like exactly what it sounds like. I am a big fan of writing on paper, but you could also do this in Microsoft Word. But all you're going to do is go through page by page of your journal. Each new event, each new idea, each new message that you see, you are going to write it down, and you are going to write the page number, if your journal has a page number, or some other kind of identifying note so that you're going to be able to find this back. Now, once we go through that, you will have a pretty sizable list, and we can think of that list as being broken apart into scenes and ideas. So our scenes are going to be any events, any kind of things that happened in your life, or experiences that you had, the happenings, right? The things that the camera could catch. You also are going to have a lot of ideas. So this is going to be the stuff where you're kind of, you're working through, like, what did this even mean? Or what was I thinking about here? Or, what kind of, how do I want to make sense of this? How can I compare it to something else? We've got all of these kind of ideas. Those are really, really nebulous. So do your very best here and just give yourself kind of a little overview. If you can do this in a word or a phrase, maybe a sentence, but try to keep your inventory really pretty brief little entries. So the first thing you're doing, go through all that, list all of that stuff out, Get through all your journals, do all of this at once, keep your brain in that kind of way of behaving. Okay, the second thing, once you have done that inventory, is that you're gonna go through and you're gonna figure out how important each of those scenes and each of those ideas are. Now, what I want you to do is we're gonna make this so that this is something you can really be objective about. That's really, really hard when we're talking about our life story, right? So what you're gonna do is go down that inventory, and next to each scene or idea, I want you to put a number from 1 to 5. 1 is something that is really not important. Maybe it was like some funny thing that you just wanted to jot down, or maybe, you wrote it down and then you were like, oh, I thought that was a lot smarter than it really is now that I look at it. 1 is going to be probably not important, probably not going to be in the book. 5 is going to be pivotal. 5 are the epiphanies. 5 are the moments of realization. 5 are the major traumas. 5 are, they have to be in the book. They have to. They are so, so important. And then, of course, you've got the 2, the 3, and the 4, because you're not always going to be able to know if it's 1 or 5. Kind of make your best guess, take your best stab at it. Each of those scenes, each of those ideas, you need to have a number next to it. So what we have from there then is we have a lot more clarity on what this book is even about. Because one thing you're going to notice as you go through the inventory and then as you go through this rating system, you are going to notice that your ideas are all over the place. Our lives are like that, right? We're really never in reality just living one storyline. We have work, we have our home life, we have our family, we have all these things that are happening, right? And they all intertwine, and maybe there's a vacation in here somewhere, and maybe like you got hurt or you got sick at some point. All of these things are happening. When we are working on a memoir, we need a memoir to be about one thing. So in the memoir method, we call this the core topic. And this is just the thing that if someone said, oh, what's your book about? You would be able to tell them in a sentence, usually a pretty short sentence, right? So this might sound like, oh, it's about my separation. Yeah, it's about my job promotion. Oh, it's about going through college. It is about one thing. So as you go through then, and you have this numerical rating system, I want you to kind of look, what are the 5s? Probably you are gonna have 5s that would be 2 different books, 3 different books, right? They're not all gonna go together. But when you look at those 5s, what do you feel like is the unifying, cohesive piece of your story? What is the story about? What's the story? So once we've done that, now we're kind of ready to think about, first of all, what is the story we want to tell? And then we also can kind of look back, what were some of those ideas that you gave a 5 to? That's going to help give you a lot of clarity on what the message that you're looking for is, right? What did you learn from this process? Okay, so once we've got that, now what we're ready to do is the structure. Now, structure is what's at the core of the memoir method, and often I will tell you it takes people a while to figure this out. This is not going to be kind of a one and done, easy peasy thing. Usually people need some time, sometimes they need some extra support. But I want to give you the building blocks so that you can start playing around with this. Now, what you are doing when you are looking at organizing a memoir is you're going to look at chronology, and then you're going to look at key moments. This is how narrative arcs work, right? Is that we are progressing through elements, but we do want them to be building, right? We want to build up to a climax that's going to be satisfying. We want to resolve that in some way. So we need to plan out when the major events happen to make sure that we are consistently keeping our readers' attention. And that's what we're doing with this inventory. So now that you've got your whole inventory, we're going to transfer it into a different program. So I like to use Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. You might just want to use a Word document. We need something where we can move things around. So as much as I like a paper and pen, we are going to need to do this electronically. Take all your 5s, write those all down into your sheet or into your Word doc. Now, there may be 5s that you already can see are not going to fit. You can leave those out if you want to, but really we want to get all those 5s in there. Then we're going to go through the 4s. We're going to put all of those in that seem to really match with that core topic we defined earlier, right? We don't want all the 4s. We actually don't even want all the 5s. We want all the things that match that core topic. All of the things that are going to help your reader understand what it was that you were going through, what your story was about. We can go through the 3s. Once we get to the 2s, we are going to be so picky, right? The reason we gave this rating was so that we could be objective when we got down the line and we were really making the decisions of what to cut. So be picky. Let yourself put stuff in that is really important to you, but hold yourself accountable for making sure you are not dumping every thought you have ever had into this list of inventory that you've got for your book. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to put our dates next to all of these scenes you've got. Now, you have an advantage here. You have a journal. You know when these happened, right? So now you're going to put chronological dates next to all of these different scenes that you have listed so that we can sort them into a chronology. Now, the great thing is, usually with journals, they're already chronological. The exception, of course, you may be kind of reflecting back. That's totally fine. But oftentimes you are already pretty well in order. So this step will be pretty quick, right? We can go through and we can just put those dates there, rearrange, make sure you've got a chronology. Now here is where this memoir method magic comes in. So now we need to decide the beginning and the end of our story. You should be able to do that. Think about what is that core topic? Where did it begin? Where did it end? That's how we're going to do what we call brackets. Once you've done that, all we're going to do is break our story into 4 quadrants. So the quadrants break at 25%, 50%, and 75%. So if you think now of the chronology of all these events you have listed on your inventory, you should be able to slice that right down the middle, that's your 50%, and then slice each of the remaining sections in half again. Now we have 4 equal quadrants. And here is where the magic comes in. You want each of those quadrant breaks to be something that speaks to both your core topic, so that thing that your book is about, and your key message, what you learned. It's not going to naturally happen like that, right? You are going to end up where you have got these splits and you've got really, maybe you're going to have to go a few pieces here, a few pieces there. You're going to have to kind of reshift around. But all you're doing here is removing and adding scenes into this list of inventory you've got so that at 50%, it ends up being a really pivotal moment in your life that, again, speaks to the core topic, speaks to that message that you learned, that lesson. You're going to do the same thing at a quarter, right? If you've got a pivotal moment that happens at like 20%, all right, well, how can we kind of add some scenes? How can we flesh some stuff out so that we are pushing that 25% to something that matches our core topic, matches our key message, and really is going to drive home what we're getting at? And then we're going to do the same thing at 75%, right? All we are doing here is taking this timeline that probably has more events than we really need, and we're manipulating it. So we're adding elements in that maybe we had cut so that we can kind of pad out, get a little bit of extra room so that at 25% something big happens. Or much more likely, you're cutting things out. So if what we find is that we really need to push something forward, then we can add in some scenes from our journal, from our inventory that we had cut. If we find we need to push things back, we can cut things from those earlier sections so that the numbers fall naturally at 25%, 50%, 75% through your chronology so that each of those moments is a pivotal moment. Okay, the reason that we are doing that is because that is the way that the reader is going to expect things to happen. Now, if you watch any Disney movie, if you watch any television show, you will start to see that at 25%, 50%, 75%, those are when big things happen. So there's a little more to this as you're kind of playing with it. You can kind of see how it falls into place, but this is the best way really to get started. When we just look at these journals, we have all of this information in front of us, and it's really, really hard to know what to do with it. When you get that inventory down and when you start playing with that timeline to make sure, again, that we have consistent and regular moments that match your core topic and your key message, you are going to be in such a better place to finagle this outline so that it ends up being the cohesive, amazing, inspiring book I know you want it to be. Okay, so now it is time. Dig into your journal. I cannot wait to hear how this goes. Reach out. Let me know what you think. If you have questions, I'm happy to help. Let me know. I can't wait to read your book. Happy writing. I am so excited to be celebrating the 1-year anniversary of this channel, plus our newest hire, Master Book Coach, Emily Thrash. And that's why, as I said at the beginning of this video, we are offering 50% off one of our a la carte publishing services. Now, that can be a full book cover design, it can be an interior layout, it can be copy edit on your full manuscript, it can be a proofread. Any one of our a la carte services is on the table for this offer. All you need to do is sign up for our one-on-one coaching program, Editor in Your Pocket, by September 13th, 2024. Now, when you do that, you are going to get not only that 50% off, you are getting our amazing Editor in Your Pocket program. I am so proud of this program. With this program, you not only get that weekly 50-minute one-on-one time with your master book coach, you are also getting weekly developmental feedback on every single one of your chapters. So what does that mean? It means we will know exactly where you are. We will know where you need help and when you need that help. We can give you the confidence you need to keep going even when you're not sure if your manuscript is any good or not. And by the end of this program, most people have either a full set of feedback on their full first draft, or if you're efficient, you can even get a full set of feedback on your second draft. That is priceless. So all you need to do to get in on this offer is head over to pageandpodium.com/Emily. You'll learn more about our 50% off offer, and you can also click over to read more about the Editor in Your Pocket program.